Hi. Hello, how is everybody? Some of you I'm seeing for the second time today, I think. Hi, Tim. Hello. How are you all? If you're new to the live stream, I always wait a few minutes in to really get started so we can give people a chance. From Jersey. Hi. I always wait just a few minutes so we can give people a chance to join so they get the notification. So thank you for those that are here. This should be an interesting one. Hi, how are you? Yes, this should be a very interesting one. A few years ago, well, we have a few updates. And actually, while we're waiting, oh, geez. Biden is actually giving a speech right now. We're not all blue morons in Jersey. Well, I'm staying in Virginia right now, but I've been in California for quite some time, so I could say that too for California too. We're not all crazy blue lunatics. Although we're going to be diving into a bit of the lunacy of California tonight. Um, and I love talking about California because California really is the future of progressive America. California loves to be the guinea pig for just all of their radical progressive policies. So that's what we'll look at a little bit tonight. Joe Biden is actually giving a speech tonight on 2A. So I wanted to let you know while we're waiting, I'll let you know what he's saying. Let me find it. I'll pull it up for you. No, that's not what I want. Hello, Boston. Hi, Boston. New Jersey and Boston. Why did I just like that? Okay. So Biden is speaking tonight about 2A and some of the restrictions. You only hear half of every word. Here, I'll get closer. How about now? Can you hear me now? My microphone isn't plugged in because I need to get a new plug. So I'm using the microphone on my computer. So hopefully it's loud and loud and proud. It is Pride Month. Hopefully it's loud and proud for you. Biden is making me feel super smart right now. Yeah, I I can go through some here. I'll go through some of the things that he's saying while we're waiting for people to join. So this is Biden. He said there's always been limitations on what weapons you can own in America. Like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. He said, enough. We should limit how many rounds a weapon can hold. Why in God's name would an ordinary citizen be able to purchase an assault weapon that holds 30-round magazines that let mass shooters fire hundreds of bullets in a matter of minutes? Sorry, it's hard to read Biden sometimes. He also says we need to ban assault weapons and high capacity magazines. If we can't ban assault weapons, we need to raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21. That's really, I'm not getting a lot at where he's going. We need to ban assault weapons and high capacity. If we can't do that, then we need to raise the age. I saw a tweet actually by Ann Coulter that said, I would be all for raising the age to 21 if we also raise the age to vote to 21. I exactly. Cool. No more serving in the military until 21. Exactly. He doesn't make any sense. I really think what they're going to do though, what is happening right now, do I see any of this really passing? Not no. No, no, I don't because nope. You still have Joe Manchin, who's a West Virginia guy. And you also have Kristen Sinema, who's an Arizona gal. And I don't think they would ever go for this. But what I do think is going to happen is this is going to be a big talking point going into the midterms, because now a lot of people's emotions are very up in the air about recent events. And what do Democrats love to do? They love to exploit your emotions. So that's what they're going to do. This will be a big talking point up until the midterms. But with Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, I don't see anything passing, or I don't see them trying to push. Maybe they'll try to push something, but I don't really see it passing. Yeah, and don't tax children until 21. That gives them a healthy start when they have become adults. Yeah, exactly. Let's compromise. Let's actually have a conversation. Okay, you want to raise that to 21? Then let's talk about raising other things until 21. Nothing draws votes like abolishing the civil liberties. Well, I actually saw a poll on Poll Watch today. Let me see if I can pull it up. Um, that's not the poll I was looking for. I saw a poll watch on Poll Watch earlier today, and it actually said that most Americans don't want any more restrictions on firearms. Also, it's really interesting when we're having this conversation. This is how you know how hollow it is. So we're having a conversation, and we're saying that we care about lives. Yet the same president is allowing a completely open border, and tons of fentanyl is coming over that open border. Most of the fentanyl in the U.S. is coming over that border, which results in over 150 deaths per day on fentanyl alone. So if we're so worried about safety, then maybe we should close that border. Also, I always say, just for my personal experience, I've lived in red states, I've lived in blue states. I have never felt like I have never felt more pro 2A than I had living in Los Angeles and being a single girl in Los Angeles. That's where I felt like I needed to protect myself the most. Why? Because we have a governor, Gavin Newsom, who let 70 plus thousand prisoners out of prison at the beginning of our lockdowns. We elected, oh, he's also pro open borders and pro sanctuary city, right? And then we elected, I didn't elect him, but other people did. We elected George Gascon, who are getting, ooh, look at me segueing. Cool. I didn't even realize I was just about to segue. Um, we elected George Gascon, who is the super progressive DA. He's one of those rogue DAs that you hear about all the time that doesn't prosecute crime. So our city, our homicide rate spiked a 15-year high the year after he got elected. The same people support defund the police. So you have all of these things together, and then these are the people that want to restrict your rights to own a firearm and protect yourself for law abiding citizen. And, since we're talking about Los Angeles a lot, I can kind of use it as sort of an example area. When you have a place like Los Angeles, who it probably still is, I don't know, it might be between Los Angeles, maybe Chicago, I don't know. But at one point, not very long ago, and it probably still is, I just haven't checked, Los Angeles was the gang capital of the US. And a lot of the robberies that are happening right now, the random robberies that are happening on the street, are happening at gunpoint. So, do you honestly think all of those gang members are going to give up their firearms? I don't think so. Do you think mass amounts of weapons are not going to come through the southern border if that remains the same? I don't think so. And that's just a common sense guess. I don't know. But speaking of George Gascon, this is pretty good news. George Gascon, again, he's one of those rogue progressive DAs. He was elected 2 years ago, and he has a recall going against him. So there's an update in the recall. There's also another update. A judge ruled against him, and this is actually really good news for Los Angeles people. So it says, ooh, whoa, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so George Gascon's recall has collected 500,000 signatures, breaking the campaign to recall Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon, who, by the way, is a George Soros also funded district attorney, collected 500,000 signed petitions as of 531, a spokeswoman tells me they need 66,000, actually 67,000 more signatures is what they need to be verified by July 6th to get the recall on the ballot. They project collecting about 650 to 700K by the deadline for needed cushion. So, in these recall efforts, you have a certain amount of signatures that you need to collect. But even if you collect those signatures, they have to verify them and make sure they are real. So you always want to have way over what you actually need. So that way you have a little bit of cushion in case a bunch of them aren't verifiable. So they need about 200,000 more signatures in a month. But as much as they've collected in the past months, I could see them maybe pulling this off. And I really think if they pull this off, there's a good chance that he will get voted out. Los Angeles is seeing just an insane spike in crime. I'm sure you've heard about a lot of it, the smash and grabs, the follow home robberies, the random robberies just by innocent people walking on the street. And here is actually another update with him. Do you think any dim will actually get recalled in California? Serious question. Yeah, I do. Well, I've been following. So Chesa Bodine, he is another. Actually, let me look up. While we're here, I'm going to look up an update on Chesa Bodine. So Chesa Bodine is another one of those rogue DAs, and he is the district attorney in San Francisco. And he has a recall effort against him as well. And his was looking like it was going to go through, but his is sooner. Chesa Bodine recall. Let's see what's happening. His is actually sooner than what? Oh, I spelled it wrong. Hold on. His is sooner than George Gascon. Chesa Bodine recall. Let's see. Okay, so they got enough signatures in his recall. So there's an election on June 7th. Oh, ooh, that's really soon. Yeah, so they got enough signatures in San Francisco to have an election. Someone says, just got a text asking me to vote against Prop H, which would recall Chesa Bodine, saying it's just a made up ploy by venture capitalists. Wait. Powerful say yes on H rally in Chinatown today. All the crime victim speeches were agonizing. By the time Jason Young, whose 6-year-old son was murdered, that's really sad, spoke, I lost it and cried like a baby. No justice, no peace. Recall Chesa Bodine. Oh, we'll have to pay attention to that. That's June 7th. That's next week. Okay, well, I guess we'll find out the answer to that question next week in that recall election. But him and George Gascon are basically the same. And it looks like they're on track to get enough signatures to George Gascon. But his election, George's election will be in November. All right, we'll have to pay attention to that. They said just in time for the primary. But here's some news about George Gascon. So, breaking LADA loses in court again. A California appellate court rules today that Gascon must obey California's three strikes law and prosecute special circumstance allegations, upholding a previous judge's decision after Gascon was sued by the Los Angeles District Attorneys Union. Gascon appealed and lost. LADA Gascon had even argued that the union representing his own prosecutors didn't have legal standing to sue him. The appellate court writes, this is very interesting. The district attorney oversteps his authority. He is an elected official who must comply with the law. So when George Gascon, the very first day that that's really good news. And I love how the judge said, you need to obey the law. You cannot overstep the law. But the very first day he was in office, he wrote off, like minutes within he took office, he wrote off 50 directives to all of his employees telling them we can't prosecute special circumstances, which that's gang involvement, um, gun, if you do a crime with a gun, like things like that. We can't do special enhancements, and that will actually increase your sentence. And then he said we can't abide by the three strikes rule that's in California. And three strikes is this. This is pretty interesting because this was enacted in 1994, the same year as the 1994 crime bill that Joe Biden actually signed. California three strikes sentencing law was originally enacted in 1994. The essence of the three strikes law was to require defendant convicted of any new felony having suffered one prior conviction of a serious felony to be sentenced to state prison for twice the term otherwise provided for the crime. So if you do multiple serious crimes, they'll like double your sentence and keep people away for longer. And that actually helped crime a lot. Exactly. And the thing about the criminal justice system is a lot of people think it's just the officers that are on the street arresting, but they can arrest people as much as possible. But if you have a DA that's not prosecuting crime and then that person is out the next day, what does that really do? It doesn't do too much. It says it came in 1994. Yeah, this is California government website. It said it was originally enacted in 1994. Now I'm curious. California three strikes law has its origins, terrible event. Oh, hold on. So Florida has a 1988 habitual offender law. I wonder if that's what you're thinking of. All right, so I thought it would be fun. Well, not fun. That's a weird. A few years ago, there was a lot of talk about the so-called assault weapons ban. If they ban assault rifles, my assault rifle were transgendered. I saw a bunch of Father's Day shirts today that said like world's greatest dad, and I thought about buying one and identifying as a dad on Father's Day and maybe collect gifts. All right, so we had a lot of talk about reparations a few years ago. This really came up, and a lot of people we're talking about it and thinking about it. And my question is always, okay, well, what would that look like? Like, is it taxpayer funded? Who would get reparations, and how would you decide? How would you pay it out? Well, of course, Gavin Newsom, like the leader that he is, put together, it was either last year or 2 years ago, he put together a reparations task force, and they did a 492-page report. And we're going through probably the most radical things on it. So I thought it would be interesting to look, because I've always wanted to know what would that actually look like, because you hear people talking about it, but no one has actually said specifically what it would look like. Well, now we have an almost 500-page report, and this was what Gavin Newsom put together. It was either last year or the year before. He put together a reparations task force to basically research and write up an entire report. Um, So it says following okay, so it was 2020. I was right 2 years ago. Well, I was right on one half. It says following a 2020 law to study the subject, a panel of left wing academics and policymakers on Wednesday released their findings on how California can remedy the harm against the state's Black residents caused by slavery and discrimination. All Black Californians are eligible for the benefits of the program if they can prove they are descendants of African Americans enslaved in the U.S. Or of free Black people living in the country before the end of the 19th century. A new state agency called the California African American Freedom Affairs Agency would provide genealogical tests for residents. I will say there was a large property in Manhattan Beach that was actually, it was sort of unjustly taken from a family in Manhattan Beach, and they sort of returned, I think it was owned by the state, and they actually returned the property to the family. I agreed with that because it wasn't even that long ago that that happened, and the relatives or the family, the descendants were still here. So I actually agreed with that. It's like, I think it's a big park area, so I don't know what they're going to do with it. Thank you so much, Frank. God bless all of you and your commitment to truth. Thank you very much, Frank. I appreciate that. Okay, so these are the eight most oh, I'm sorry. The 492 report lists the task force preliminary findings and recommendations. The final report is scheduled to be released in July of next year. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with the report. I guess this would have to pass through legislation. Okay, so the very first thing, so these are the eight most radical things. Keep that in mind. So this is the most radical that's on this entire report. So number one, child support forgiveness. The panel recommends that California eliminate overdue child support owed to the government by Black parents who no longer have custody of their children. Black Californians would no longer need to reimburse the state for current or past government assistance related to child support. The panel recommends that the elimination of all interest payments on past child support owed by Black Californians. Hold on. Am I missing something? Why is it owed to the government? It's owed to the mom. Okay, am I wrong? Can someone correct me if I'm wrong? Because I'm a child. I come from a single family home. My parents divorced when I was 3, and my mom had full custody. He was supposed to pay child support, but he actually didn't for a very long time. And my mom could have gone after him for that back child support. So that's why I'm confused as to why you would owe the state child support. Wouldn't you owe the mother that back child support? That's what I don't understand. But how, okay, I need to look into how is that owed to the state? Wouldn't that be owed to the mother? Because the state always gets theirs. Because okay, for one, I would be against eliminating that back child support because the one that directly hurts from that is the child being I don't want to use the word victim, but I don't know how else to the state gives money to the mom, but still that would be owed to the mom. Like if the mom were to decide to pursue that back child support and take that person to court, see to me that hurts the child, right? I'm going to tell you what I think already about this whole thing. No. Hmm. Okay, that's interesting. So that's the first one. Okay, the second one is to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to destroy anti Black memorials and monuments. The task force recommends the establishment of the commission named after the 1996 South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was created was created following the end of apartheid, is that how you say it? To identify human rights violations against the majority Black population during their time living under white only rule. The task force also recommends that the state create forms of acknowledgement and apology for acts of political disenfranchisement and and destroy all anti-black memorials and monuments, presumably identified by the task force. Does California pervasive policy pervasive police violence against extrajudicial killings of African Americans occur in California as they do in the rest of the country, the panel concludes. As part of an effort to help heal the state's Black community, the panel recommends the state fund art that acknowledges the trauma of state sanctioned white supremacist. Here's my thing. The same policies that all of these far leftists support are actually hurting the very communities that they say they're doing all of this for. I hope there's other things in there that are like, let's build after school programs in communities. Let's do things to help the family unit. Let's see, you have police violence again. Okay. Let's put more police in these communities because the crime is out of control. Black stepped out for a sec. Oh, well, what do you think, Braxton? Okay, free college education. The task force recommends the state eliminate tuition for all California colleges, as well as offering funding to create Black-owned K through 12 schools and colleges. Black Californians should also receive scholarships to cover 4 years of undergraduate education, presumably any university in the country. Wow. The task force also recommends that the state identify and eliminate racial bias and discriminatory practices in standardized tests, including the SAT, LSAT, and the state bar exam, with no elaboration on how this would be done. To further anti-racist education in the state, all California schools must adopt a curriculum that advances, I can't read tonight. I am so sorry. I get what they're coming from because I'm Black, but some were slave owners and some were enemies of the state. But those statues hasn't come to life and nothing said to me. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Those statues haven't come to life. Sorry. I was trying to figure out what you were saying. Those statues haven't come to life and said anything to me. I mean, that's my point too. I understand where they're coming from. I do, but there's so many problems, especially in California. And it's just interesting that this is where we're going. Keep in mind, this is the most radical of the whole 500. It's like there are so many simple things that they could do to really help the communities that they say they care about. There are so many simple things that they could do, but they're hiring a tax this task force started 2 years ago and spent all this time and all this money writing up this report when there's so many things I think that could be done that would help immediately. Okay, this is by far my favorite one, I think, so far. Trees in Black neighborhoods for shade equity. Uh, in the name of ending so called environmental racism, the task force recommends the state fund the planting of trees to create shade equity. Look, I'm actually all for planting trees. I think that's a great thing. I think the more trees we plant, especially in really urban areas, I think the better. It's just funny that it's called shade equity. The language is what's really funny. I threw plenty of shade equity. No, I really am. I'm all for gardens, trees, all of that. But it's the you just how many people on this task force do you think are white? What- oh gosh. Wait, please don't tell me they actually say Whole Foods. Please don't tell me they actually say Whole Foods. You guys, less McDonald's, more Whole Foods. This whole task force is white. How much do you want to bet this entire task force is white? So they say the task force wants to reduce the density of fast food restaurants and promote the opening of healthy retailers such as Whole Foods and farmers markets in majority black neighborhoods. Okay, farmers markets are great. Whole Foods is freaking that's they call it whole paycheck. Shades of equity. I love how their minds instantly go to Whole Foods, which is one of the most expensive retailers. Food one of the most expensive grocery stores, excuse me, or food retailers, healthy retailers such as Whole Foods. Whole Foods is I don't go to Whole Foods. That's really funny. Oh, here's the best one. Let them eat arugula. I'm actually for farmers markets because I farmers markets are really good to go to and they're really fun. That is a millennial for you. They need more Whole Foods. Putting Whole Foods in Starbucks in low income neighborhoods is currently being called gentrification. Yeah. But what's crazy is there's so much you actually could do. Bezos paid for that study. I love I love farmers markets. There's actually a really cool vegetable stand close to where I'm staying right now. That's one of my favorite places to go to. Okay, here's the other one. You really want to help the community that you say you want to help, and this is also on the reparations report. The task force calls for an end to discriminatory policing and particularly killings, use of force, and racial profiling of Black Americans. This means a review of every incarcerated Black California. Oh, so they want a review of every single incarcerated Black Californian, every single one of them. And no one's saying that you shouldn't review it. I think every case to determine whether they have been wrongfully convicted or have received longer or harsher sentences than white people convicted of the same or similar crimes. The task force recommends fewer police in Black communities. So they're recommending fewer police in Black communities. Do you think that decreases crime or do you think that increases crime? The scope of law enforcement jurisdiction must be curtailed and replaced by more funding for prevention and mental health care. All for prevention and mental health care. Law enforcement should also issue fewer citations at liquor and tobacco stores in Black neighborhoods. To me, is that not the bigotry of low expectations right there in that sentence? Law enforcement should also issue fewer citations at liquor and tobacco stores in Black neighborhoods. Free healthcare. Black Californians should be entitled to free health care. The task force finds all Black Californians who suffered from the country's anti Black healthcare system should be entitled to financial compensation as well. So, free healthcare and financial compensation. To create more Black doctors and healthcare professionals, the task force recommends that the state engage in more affirmative action programs and a race conscious public health policy. Number 8. So, this is the last one. It's interesting. I was just watching Heather McDonald testify. I can't remember who she was testifying for, but yeah, many people, and there's video after video after video. Many people, if you go into like it doesn't matter what the majority of the race is, any low income, high crime area, people either want the same amount of police or they actually want more policing. And just seeing police officers present, the more they sort of just patrol or they're present in that area, the less crime people are likely to commit. On top of all the new forms of welfare and assistance outlined in the task force report, Black Americans are entitled to cash reparations intended to shrink the racial wealth gap. The exact dollar amount is not specified. The state must also provide funding and technical assistance to Black led and Black community based land trusts to support wealth building and affordable housing, as well as raise minimum wage beyond the state mandated 15 per hour. But is the state okay, is the state minimum wage, is that just for individuals who qualify for the reparations or is that for the whole state? And how would you roll that out? Because if I'm an employer, let's say I'm getting ready to hire people, so that must be they want to raise the minimum wage in the entire state. Otherwise, you would be someone that is a part of this reparations program and you would go interview for a job and you would say, "Hey, I'm actually a part of this program. This is my, I don't know what you would call it, like my voucher or my certificate or my proof that I'm a part." So you actually have to hire me at a higher wage than you would anyone else because I'm a part of this program. Is that how that works? Or maybe the place that hires you gets some kind of government incentive and then they're able to afford a higher wage. The task force also recommends the creation of a state fund to support the development and sustainment of Black owned businesses. All right, those were, it's a 500-page report. Rational wronging. Can you get reparations if you identify as Black? See, I don't know. Decriminalizing the smash and grabs means Whole Foods would be operating free and negative. Um, so there it is. Those are the 5 most radical things on. I was actually really curious about this because I remember the announcement of this 2 years ago when this was first being rolled out that Newsom was doing this reparations task force that was going to take 2 years. What were they doing for 2 years? It's so funny because Republicans think that people that go and get these BS degrees from college that they can't go out and get jobs, but actually they can. And they're on They're on stuff like this, or they're in the diversity and equity or the gender ideology. They're on one of those boards at wherever it is they work. So yes, you can get a job with a gender theory woman studies degree, apparently. Don't know if this is true, but more Republicans voted for the Civil Rights Act in Congress. I believe that is true. Somebody said it's really stupid to call it shade equity. What it is planting trees to beautify surroundings, clean the air, provide shade, and make the city less ugly so that people will behave better. People who live in a crap neighborhood behave like crap. I love that because I'm all for funding planting of more trees and making things more beautiful. I actually fully agree with that. I want to read it again. And that's it's the language that they use, the shade equity. It's really stupid to call it shade equity. What it is planting trees to beautify the surroundings, clean the air, provide shade, and make the city less ugly so that people will behave better. People who live in a crap neighborhood behave like crap. Yeah, it's better for the soul to live in a more beautiful area. When you're just looking at concrete and graffiti all the time, which a lot of Los Angeles, even the good parts, is concrete and graffiti. It is really sad though because it really does break my heart because there are a lot of problems in California, and if you're going to put together a task force, you could have really put together a task force that really did something for a lot of these low income high crime areas, that really did things that are tangible and based in reality that would actually help people immediately. And yet you put together this task force that has 500 pages on, I mean, it's crazy. But you really could have put together like a task force that would have actually identified real problems. Yes, let's plant trees in these areas. Let's put farmers markets in these areas. Let's have maybe more policing. Let's maybe improve the relationship between the police and the residents. Maybe let's do ride along programs with some of the young people, especially a lot of the young boys that don't have dads. I mean, that how cool would that be? And create a relationship with people. Let's build after school programs. Let's talk to corporations in the area that maybe do programs that say, hey, I will pay for your college if you come work for me for 2 or 3 or 4 years after you graduate from college. Like there's so many things that you could actually do, but in my opinion, I don't know, I see that as a big virtue signal of Gavin Newsom and his administration, because you have to understand the mind of Gavin Newsom. He's thinking, I'm going to be the president one day. I'm going to be this super progressive hero. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do all the really progressive talking points, but all of it is hollow. None of it actually works. Just like every year he says, we're going to throw $12 billion at homelessness. And why does it keep getting worse then? If you're throwing that much money at homelessness, why has homelessness decreased? I think 18% across the whole country, but has increased 30% in California since he's been the governor. Yet he's putting $12 billion a year at to fight homelessness, and it's gotten worse. He is a walking giant virtue signal that's only thinking about his political career and not the people he actually governs. We need to start a task force to look into Gavin. He's got to go. Well, Michael Schallenberger is going to be running for governor. I really like him. I read his book, San Francisco. He has really good and tangible plans to fight homelessness and crime. It's throwing money not at the homelessness studies. Yeah, so it's basically throwing money, and that's what I almost suspect the reparations task force is. It's basically they call it the homeless industrial complex. If you look at where all the money goes, it almost seems like the majority of money goes to people that work to fight homelessness. It goes to all of their salaries, and they're just walking around with clipboards, getting paid, and nothing gets better. Or they're overpaying developers to develop things that are just not sustainable for a homeless individual to live in. I think it was somewhere around these apartment units that they were making for homeless people to live in cost like $500,000 a unit to make. And it's ridiculous. It's going to developers that they're overpaying, and it's going to all of these people that are walking around in circles with clipboards and saying, yep, we have problems. And that's what I believe this task force is all about. It's just paying all these people to say, yeah, we have a problem and this is what we need to do and we're going to make a lot of money, and but they don't actually improve anything. They probably don't want to improve anything, because if it's improved, they have nothing to complain about. And then they lose their job. There was always a funny saying. I never worked in criminal justice, but I worked in mental health. But there is a saying, if crime was completely eliminated, a lot of people would be out of a job. He's a moron just like Joe Biden. Yes. So this is Michael Schallenberger, who's running against Gavin Newsom. This is his platform. So on homelessness, shelter first, housing earned. So he wants to build more shelters. So this is what a lot of people don't know. A lot of activists in California, they do not want to build shelters. They say housing first. If you put someone in a house, if you put them in an apartment, all their problems will go away and their drug problems will go away. The reason they have those problems is because they're homeless. Well, he says, no, we put them in a shelter and then they earn their housing by saying, I'm not using, I'm getting help with my addiction, I'm getting help, I'm getting mental health services, I'm looking for a job, things like that. He said, as opposed to Newsom, who is housing first, anti shelter policy has resulted in open drug scenes. Schallenberger will enforce laws and expand policing and probation. Newsom championed decriminalization policies that created lack of accountability, and it's emptying prisons without rehabilitating criminals first. Michael Schallenberger will create CalPsych, a statewide mental health and addiction recovery service agency to treat the humanitarian crisis of ill and drug addicted people wasting away in our streets. Gavin Newsom is wasting billions of dollars on a follied system that is leaving people to die in the streets. Newsom has no vision to fix this system, save lives, and restore our communities. Schallenberger will make energy and water abundant and cheap. Newsom is making water and energy scarce by limiting energy production and failing to build voter approved water storage projects. Schallenberger believes schools are first and foremost for educating students. Newsom believes schools are for the agendas of adults, not kids and families, whether it be unions, misguided public health bosses, or woke special interest. Schallenberger has the courage to care for California. Newsom cares primarily about his own political future and path to the White House instead of his fellow Californians. I was right. Yes. So Michael Schellenberger, yeah. So Cal Psych would require more government, but I think that in some areas there should be a little bit more government. I used to work for mental health in Virginia, and we had a system. They had a system very like Cal Psych, what he is proposing. And I would totally put my tax dollars towards that if it got a lot of the homeless off the street and they were being housed in mental health and it was safer. I am all for government being expanded in that capacity. More government is always the problem for no, I don't think it's the problem for every solution, but I think some solutions that's what he's proposing, I think is the best thing that I've heard so far. There's a place called City Care in OKC that is transitional housing for the homeless, working very well. Check it out. Okay, cool. Um, Schallenberger will win by building a movement that realigns California's politics around consensus and common sense. Newsom will lose by putting the elite political ruling class, campaign donors, and special interests down ordinary people. I don't think he's running as a party. I wish I could remember what he said. I don't think, wait, many people think politics can be explained on a simple left right spectrum. Okay, here, I don't think he's running on a on okay, here, I'll figure it out right here. Many people think politics can be explained on simple left right spectrum, but I'm liberal in my compassion for the vulnerable, a libertarian in my passion for freedom, and a conservative in my belief that you need a civilization to support them both. I'm running for governor in part because I don't like our choices. I don't like the polarization. I don't like the extremism. I think there needs to be a third way, and I've created an agenda that I think is consistent with the various problems facing California. Schallenberger for government. I want to say is he running as an independent? Which if he is, I think he is.
California is in a crisis of chaos. We won't return to normal until rampant homelessness and crime are dealt with and order is restored. The politicians have failed us. We need an intervention imposed by voters. I am that intervention. I'm Mike Schellenberger. I'm running for governor to fix this crisis and rebuke the elite political ruling class that is failing to lead California. I have gone out into the streets of the cities to truly understand why our civilization is failing to maintain order. Gavin Newsom is an arrogant politician beholden to special interests. Under Newsom, schools became for the adults who run them rather than for the children who need them. No bid contracts went to his political allies, and COVID restrictions were for us, not for him. I'm leading a movement unlike any other. Together, we can take control of California back from political elites and reinstate common sense. We can reinstate order. We can reinstate schools that put kids first. We can restore California's promise. But we must have the courage to care. I have that courage. Please join me.
I don't think he's running as anything. Which is probably smart because California is so far to the left that the mere sight of somebody having an R in front of their name or the mere thought that anyone has any connection to Orange Man bad, he's going to lose Democratic votes. And if you want to win California, you have to get Democratic votes. You have to get Democrat votes. You just have to. I don't know. He isn't saying enough about lockdowns and business. I don't know what he thinks about that. Am I back? It said my connection went out. Yeah, he is an environmentalist. He wrote a book called, what was it called? Oh, he wrote a book called Apocalypse Never. And it was basically calling out, he doesn't like radical leftists. He's probably more of a classical liberal, but not a radical leftist. And he didn't like he recognizes things about climate and taking care of it and everything, but he doesn't like the extremism and the activist side to the climate activists and how they just fear monger everything. Like he doesn't like the AOCs and stuff like that, who says the world's going to end in 10 years. Does California have a barrier, any barriers to non major party candidates? I am not sure, actually. Yeah, I don't know about that one. Let's see. Here's they wrote about him in the San Francisco Gate. Michael Schallenberger looks like the only candidate who has a chance of beating Gavin Newsom in California's governor race. The Gavin Newsom recall election last year demonstrated that the incumbent California governor is as close to unbeatable as it gets when he's running against a Republican opponent or a Republican recall. I'm telling you, that's hardly surprising in a state where Democratic voters outnumber Republican voters 2 to 1 at the time where the R label is a non starter for many rank and file. Democratic Party's candidate or governor or senator was a paper bag, and the California Republican Party's candidate was Abraham Lincoln. It seems likely the paper bag would triumph so long as it had a D next to its name and Lincoln had an R next to his. That's very true. Perhaps that's an over exaggeration, but it underscores the fact that this year's gubernatorial race will not be competitive if CAGOP endorsed Brian Dale comes second in the June 7th primary and advances the general election. Newsom is running TV ads boasting Dale's name ID because he prefers to run against a Republican and have a cakewalk re election. Okay, but what is Schallenberger? While there have been no public polling for the race, the main threat to Dale for second place on June 7th appears to be author Michael Schallenberger. Yes, a no party preference candidate who was raised who has raised 1 million, the third highest sum behind Newsom and Dale, which polls indicate Newsom's approval rating is above water. A recent Public Policy Institute of California poll found that there are more residents who believe the state is headed in the wrong direction as opposed to the right direction. So he is a no party candidate, which I think is smart. And he's running, I think the way he's running his campaign is very smart. He's saying, I don't like the polarization. I'm not a politician. I am just someone who wants to make things better. I think that's really, really smart. Schallenberger sounds like an appetizer that pairs well with a nice dry mixed red wine. Los Angeles Graffiti Cafe. What is that? All right, you all. Well, I think that's about it for tonight. Thank you all for joining. I had fun. I hope you did as well. And I'll see you all later. Have a really good night. Schallenberger with a side of fries. They should make a if I had a burger joint, I would make a Schallenberger. Later, everyone. Have a good night. He sounds like an Irish plus kosher type of guy. All right, talk to you all later. See ya. Bye.